All of your movements are backwards. You're walking backwards, you're running backwards, you're standing backwards, you're moving backwards. Or more specifically, you're moving inside out. And so this practice today is all about reversing those movements so that you can start to move from the inside, allowing all of the tensions that are gripping on the outside, allowing those to soften because we don't need to use those muscles to move from if we're moving from the muscles on the inside. And so there's over 600 muscles in the human body. And more specifically, there's different trains of muscles. So there's 13 muscle trains in the body. It's how the muscles are connected or surrounded by this connective tissue. And so today I want to bring some super awareness to the deep front line of muscles, the muscles that run down or up the front of your spine and even connect to the base of the tongue. But they're not just in the upper half, right? They also go through the pelvis, surround this, or the connective tissue surrounds this psoas muscle. And this is a muscle that's as thick as your wrist. It's super an important muscle. I call it the sexy walk muscle. A lot of people, especially as they get older, they kind of just swing the leg forward and they're walking like a duck-billed platypus. Um, but if you can imagine being on a runway and kind of swaying the hips, this is the muscle that gets used. But over time, it starts to atrophy because we don't use it. However, this is the only muscle that connects our legs with our spine. And more specifically, it connects the inner thigh with the front of the spine. And so when this muscle gets tight or when it shortens, what happens is it pulls that spine forward, it tilts the pelvis, but we're not going to fall forward as we're walking. So what do? We arch the shoulders back and we create this compression in the low back. And over years and decades, our low back keeps taking the brunt of this weight. And so super important this entire chain of muscles that actually starts at the plantar fascia at the bottom of the feet. It goes up through the inner shins, inner thigh, right, wraps around that psoas muscle, goes through the pelvis, runs up the front of the spine, and even connects to the base of your tongue. So when you stick out your tongue, you're actually pulling on that connective tissue that connects all of those muscles. And so today is about not stretching that line because a lot of people ask, like, how do I stretch this? How do I stretch the psoas muscle? And yes, you can. But more specifically today, I want to focus on how we activate it and how we soften it too, right? Because we do want to give those muscles a rest at the same time as allowing them to help us move from the inside. Um, so I think this starts off with our posture, right? We are standing backwards and we're hanging out not just in the outer body, but we're loading all of the joints and we're hanging out in the joints. So we're going to get into posture a little bit, how we can change just our standing posture and how will that help to not only activate these muscles, but start to strengthen the joints um, and keep us healthy as we age. And so, with that said, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to begin today standing. And when you come to a standing position, I just want to bring one more thing, um, bring awareness to one more thing. When we talk about posture, too, it's everything. It's from our sitting, it's the way that we are when we're eating or we're on our phones or we're playing a video game or we're watching TV, right? So many people slouch. And what happens is that we just overextend all of the tissues on the outer body. We're using none of the core. Um, but what happens if we use the core muscles to lengthen and we still allow the outer body to be soft, right? And so now we're not over stretching all of those muscles for sometimes hours on a day. Um, but we're actually giving them a break by activating the core muscles. And as we activate the core muscles, we don't want to stay 100% engaged. The core will tire out very quickly. So we want to soften the core a bit, but we want to keep a 20% engagement so that we still stay lifted from the inside. So even as we're standing there, so many people are right, they're slouching. But even more specifically, if we look at our posture, a lot of people hyperextend the knee joint, so they jam the knee joint back in the socket, right? And as they do that, and we're loading the joint, if you were tired enough, you'd be able to lean against a wall or a tree or something and probably close your eyes and take a nap. Okay, because the joints are holding you up, all of the bones are kind of stacked, right? But what happens if we just add a micro bend to the knees? Suddenly the weight's no longer all in the heels, and we're not loading the frame, and we're not arching the back, and we're not crunching in the low back. The weight actually shifts a little bit forward into the forefoot of the foot. And so it's into the toe mounts, the big toe mount, the little toe mount. And as the weight shifts slightly forward, the body actually finds more of a balance, right? We no longer have to arch the shoulders back. But also, we couldn't lean against a wall and fall asleep, right? Because the knees are bent. We would collapse. And so what happens is we actually activate the muscles that surround the joint, the muscles that support us and hold us up and move us from the inside. So we're actually making the joint stronger by keeping a bend. So as we move through today's practice, okay, through this short practice, we want to make sure that there's always a micro bend in the knees. We're never going to lock them out, okay? Because today we're actually coming into some one leg balances. However, as we go to balance, I want a bend to that knee. If we lock the knee, then we're just loading all of the weight onto the joint. So keep that in mind, keeping them soft so that we can activate these core muscles. In the second part of this, super important when I tell you to press down, is that you really press into the ground. But not only just pressing down, right? But you also envision that entire line connecting the feet through the top of the head, so that when you press down, you actually create this rebound, right? This wave from the base to the face, right? From the feet to the crown. You're kind of creating this wave as all of the muscles are activating all the way from the feet, the ankles, the knees, the hips, all the way up the spine. And so we can continue doing that. And as we do that 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 times in a single practice, and then you show up and you do this for days, suddenly you reset all of the muscles from the inside. And not only build that core strength, but you start to feel younger and move easier. So with that said, as we stand here, I want you to begin to shift the weight from one foot to the other, and we're just going to pick up the opposite foot, place it down, maybe shake it out a little bit. And this is just to try to find our natural positioning of the feet. And so we're not looking down at the feet, we're looking forward, and we're just letting the feet naturally come to the ground, and then we'll begin to find the weight evenly between the feet. And as we do so, right, the knees are soft. How many of you actually locked the joints? Okay, just check in with yourself and see if you can break some of these habits, right? Just keep reminding yourself of keeping a micro bend to the knees. And now go ahead and glance down at the feet and just notice if one foot maybe is slightly ahead of the other, or maybe one foot is turned a little more out than the other. And there's a lot of reasons that could be, right? It could be the bony structure. It could be something tight. One of the external rotators of the hip, which are in the glute, they just kind of grab this femur bone and turn and rotate this femur bone outward so the toes can point outward, things like that. So it could be a lot of different reasons. But right now, we don't want to force anything, right? If we try to force a shape in your body, then the knees can start caving in. Things can happen that we just want to avoid for this class in particular, because this is your natural stance. And normally, when you find this natural stance, the knees are behind the second and third toe. So they're not caving inward, they're not too far out, right? But they're right where they should be. And so, standing here, we make sure we have that 20% engagement of the core, shoulders kind of roll back and soften, and we start off with our good posture. And so now we're just going to bring in some warm-ups for the shoulders. So on the inhale, palms are going to face forward, and on the exhale, palms are going to press back. So we're just internal and external rotating the arms here. So inhale as the palms face forward, maybe the hands come slightly forward, sit bones go back. I'm just going to turn to the side here. And on the exhale, palms press back as we stand tall, lengthen through the top of the head. So breathing in each time, maybe you sit down a little bit lower as the hands come forward. You're just finding that balance forward and back. And on the exhale, press into the ground, palms sweep back. So just continuing this, inhale forward. And exhale, trying to make it a wave, right? So inhale, the arms just float forward and high. And exhale, we press into the ground, lengthen up the front of the spine. So creating that wave from the feet to the face. Breathe in and sweep it forward. And breathing out. So you can just stay here and do only this if you choose. Right? And really just, the more we do this, the more we press down and we start to activate those core muscles. Or we'll reset the anatomy from the inside and start to move better, feel better. And so now we're just going to change our hand position a little bit. So we're just going to make these strong fists as we draw them back to the hips, pressing into the ground, lengthen up the spine. Inhale forward and high, and exhale. So really focusing on the breath, really focusing on pressing down and creating that strength, right? You should feel some of the muscles tighten. So now we're just going to begin to shift the weight here. So inhale, sweep it forward. And on the exhale, the weight's going to shift to the right side. Left heel's going to lift up. So again, that bottom knee is soft, right? But we press down so we create a strong joint. So inhale forward and high. Exhale, the next time we come to the right foot, maybe we even practice on that balance, lifting that left knee up, keeping that bottom knee soft. Breathing into place the foot, sweep it forward and high. And breathing out, just switching sides, playing with the balance on the left side. Just noticing the difference from one side to the next and allowing your foot to naturally place on the ground. So you're not forcing the toes forward, nothing is being forced here, as we're just exploring from side to side. As you continue this, you can stay there, or perhaps you even begin to extend the leg, pressing through the heel, stretching the backside all the way up the spine. So we have this entire backside of muscles that connects the forehead, sweeps all the way down the back, down the sides of the spine, the erector spinae, the glutes, hamstrings, calves, to the bottom of the feet. So we're just getting that full stretch in, but in a safe way, right? We're keeping the bottom knee soft here. We're just exploring the balance on each side. And just continue that and continue exploring that balance, keeping the knee soft, because that'll also keep the ankle soft and allow us to start to activate some of the stabilizing muscles in the knees, the hips, the ankles, and around the joints, so that we actually make the joints stronger. And just have fun with it. And I'll see you next time.